It is, and it's all chaperoned. So that's the key thing for all of these things. So dating is not allowed in this world, it's courting. And the biggest difference is dating, you're kind of just testing the waters, but you have no idea if you're going to last more than one date with someone. Dating is with the intention of marriage. You are entering into a relationship saying, I intend to marry you at the end of this. So, and it is also chaperoned. So, you're never allowed to be alone with anybody of the opposite sex. So, you couldn't even at this college shake hands with the opposite sex, let alone anything else. So, they always have people all over the place watching what you're doing. And believe me, if you do anything, they see it and you will be told. So, everything is very much contained within that.
Trigger warning: this podcast contains mature themes and discussions of cults, manipulation, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking, where we expose the dark side of control, manipulation, and the human stories behind them. I'm Anonymous Andrew, executive producer and investigator into cult dynamics and coercive control.
And I'm Melody, a cult survivor and advocate for awareness and healing.
This is Cultimatum. Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Cultimatum Podcast, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew. And with me tonight is my co-host, Melody. Hello, Melody. Who do we have on the show tonight?
Hello, Andrew. Tonight we are joined by Kristin Watson, who shares her story online about growing up in the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church, raised in a system shaped by strict control and purity culture. Kristin explains how women and children often had little to no voice within the group. Since leaving, she has been on a journey of unlearning those teachings and reclaiming her own voice. Kristin also speaks openly about her excommunication and the stark contrast between what it meant to be feminine inside the IFB, where women were expected to be submissive, and what femininity looks like for her now, independent, empowered, and self-defined. Kristin, welcome to Cultimatum.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. I just started listening to your podcast recently, and I was very excited to see the avenue and the vein that you all went in. So thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for saying that and welcome. And where would you like to begin?
Yeah, so I think in order to begin the story, we have to go all the way back to my very young childhood. So it really all does begin with my father, who ultimately wanted control of his house. So he was a man who really valued him being in control of our household, and that included my mother and us as children. So, with that way of thinking, that produced us going to various churches that aligned with his way of thinking. So from the very beginning, I did not start out in IFB. However, they were all churches that really made him the head of the household. They all did corporal punishment, not just for the children, but also for the wives as well. So wives were almost just slightly above the children in these churches. It wasn't just the kids being punished or seen as less than him. And it is interesting, all of those churches were of various types, but they all had that one thing in common. And as my story kind of progresses, it goes from I was in a Christian school from the ages of, or the grades of kindergarten to about third grade, until my dad felt like it was too worldly. It was teaching his kids things that he didn't approve of. And so the control went from a little bit more loose control to really having full control over what his children were consuming on an educational basis and on a daily basis as well. So he pulled us out of school, all of my brothers and myself, at the third grade age. And from third grade all the way through high school is I was homeschooled. And I use that term really loosely. For the first couple of years, they were pretty good about actually educating us as children. Like we had a curriculum, we went through the school. There were things that he obviously added as well, but he really controlled everything. But after those first 2 years, I really didn't receive a lot of education. So thankfully, I'm really scrappy and I'm very intelligent just by myself. So I was able to kind of learn things as I got older and everything. But I use the term education very loosely when it comes to the rest of my education through high school. So we got pulled out of school. We're in these various churches that all put him as the head of the household. I then come to the point where I had a younger brother who actually was diagnosed with a rare blood disease at around 7 to 8 months of age, and it put him in the hospital for the bulk of his life until he passed away at the age of 2. And this is where the IFB comes into play. I like to say that these types of churches, they prey on people when they're in their most vulnerable states. So when you are, addicted to drugs or alcoholism or losing a child, this is when they swoop in to become your answer. And that's exactly what happens. So during this time, I was actually a professional figure skater. I started at the age of 3. Because I was homeschooled, I basically skated my whole life. So I figure skated about 5 to 6 days a week. I was in the rink. I use the term home for the ice rink because my home growing up, unfortunately, with my dad being as controlling as he was also extremely abusive, both physically and emotionally in every sense of the word. So my home life was just tumultuous. And my mother wasn't much better than what he was. And there really wasn't a lot of love in the home. So I used ice skating as an escape. And it became my home. It became the one place where I was seen and recognized and felt safe. Hence why I spent as much time as I did there. So, the way we discovered the church, the pastor of this fundamentalist Baptist church actually worked part time at the ice rink. So, we met him there. He kind of discovered what our family was going through, talked to us about the church, and that began our journey into fundamentalism. Now, typically within an independent fundamentalist Baptist church, you wouldn't be allowed to ice skate, whether you're a boy or a girl, but specifically being a girl because the outfits aren't appropriate. You're in an environment that's worldly. So there are varying degrees of fundamentalist Baptist churches, and this would be considered a mid level. We get into more of a really heavy cult church later in my story. But the reason why I was allowed to continue, this specific pastor, he's actually out of IFB now, and he's recognized a lot of the things that he's done wrong. So there's a complicated story with this particular pastor. So anyway, he told my parents that normally he wouldn't approve something like this, but he felt that it was a God-given talent and he felt that my skating was just too beautiful for me to quit. So I continued. My then brother passed away, like I said, at the age of 2. And at this point, we are just heavy duty into fundamentalist Baptist. We went from these churches where I was allowed to wear pants and things like that to now I have pants taken away. There's really a strict hierarchy. They used the term the umbrella as far as the way they structured the church. And the umbrella is that you have God at the top, you have the pastor underneath that, you have your father, your mother, and the children. And it's the umbrella of protection is the word I was looking for. So as long as you stayed in your place and in your position, then you were safe. If you stepped outside of that and outside of your role, you were no longer safe. And that looked like anything. If something bad happened to you, that could be a car accident. That meant that you did something that stepped outside of that, and now you're being punished for that. So it went from, like I said, a little bit looser to this really strict hierarchy, really strict role for girls and things of that nature. My brother passes away, and then I attend youth camp. And these youth camps within the fundamentalist Baptist cult world are not what you would normally think as a summer camp for children. Mind you, this is for preteens and teenagers. What it looked like was instead of bonfires and s'mores and swimming in the lake, it looked like hours and hours of preaching. And not just preaching during the day, they would keep us up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning preaching these sermons. And again, these weren't just let's get a relationship with God. Let's get to know God. Let's cultivate that. It hounded you as a preteen and teenager that you are sinful, you are worldly, that anything that you do that's for yourself, that's not of God, is sinful and it's evil. So they tried to break you down as an individual person and show you that the only good thing that's about you is God. So if it's anything that's self serving, including that figure skating, right? That is wrong. Now, I'm a very empathetic, very emotional person by nature. So you combine that with being a preteen, and I'm already, overly emotional, even more so during this time. So I'm very susceptible, unfortunately, in this environment to these ways of thinking. So you have heavy preaching, hours and hours, and then they end everything with an altar call. And it's not just oh, come if you want to come and pray. They're calling people out. They see your face, they're like, you definitely have something that you need to come down. So there's this heightened sense of responsibility that you have to do something. You have to make a change. You have to do something that's different. So it was during one of these times that because of the sermons that were being preached, I was convicted, right, during this time that figure skating was for myself. Therefore, it is evil and not of God. So I go to the altar and I give it up. And I'll never forget that moment because I was crying and my older brother was there at the time and he was crying because he didn't understand. He was in the world, but he also knew how much I loved it because he was my brother, right? So he was like, how can you do this? Long story short, when I leave the youth camp and I come back to church, in hindsight now, I wish looking back that when I came back, my adults would have told me, God doesn't need you to give this up for him. You don't need to do that. Instead, what I was faced with is the pastor, when he heard what I did, he then taught sermons about me. So I was put on this huge pedestal. I was known as like the greatest Christian girl to give up this huge thing for God. So now I'm in a position of I've already given it up, but now everybody's talking about me. I'm about 12, 13 years old. So now I have this huge weight of responsibility that I've done this big thing. I can't go back. And I
Let me
didn't.
let me jump in. I got a ton of questions. So,
Shoot.
which one you already have answered. So I thought maybe at the camp you were still able to skate, but no, they obviously not. But when you went back, wasn't that pastor the one that said he was okay with you skating because you were so beautiful at doing it? So this camp and the church they were intertwined. You gave it up in the camp, but why couldn't you go back to the church and the pastor say, "Oh, you don't have to really give that up. Go." You see where I'm going? And did you have a
Yes.
coach when you were skating? Did you have a real skating coach, or was the pastor your coach?
These are amazing questions. Thank you so much for answering them. So I'll answer the coach question first. I had a normal coach. So when I gave this up, guys, he was floored. He did not understand why. And so you can imagine that this 12-year-old girl who just gave up this huge thing is feeling this weight of everything. It also has a coach who's not in this world, who's like, what is going on? It was as if the only way I can describe it is I went from having an identity to this was the last piece of who I was, and that was gone. So as soon as I shut this down, it was as if I turned this corner of this is who Kristen was as an individual, and now I'm just the religious cult, and that's it. Now, the camp was also Independent Fundamentalist Baptist. It was not connected to the church as far as it wasn't run by the same people, but it had the same values as the Fundamentalist Baptist church that I went to. So when I came back and told the pastor, yes, he had initially said, you can do it, but he now saw it as I'm being so godly that I'm giving it up for God. So he rewarded that, right, in his mind by putting me on this pedestal. But what he was doing is putting this huge responsibility on a child that now I have to live up to this expectation of a single night and a single decision. And that in of itself shows you the type of world that it is, that they glorify self-sacrifice. They glorify getting rid of who you are to replace you with God, because ultimately that's what it is. They literally in these churches teach you that you are born sinful, that you are evil when you come into this world, that until you get saved, there's nothing good with you. So if you sing in church and someone comes up and says, you did amazing singing, you don't say thank you for you. You thank God because it's God who is working through you in order to have that voice. So you disappear and God is replaced with that.
Melody has a question.
I do. Um,
And then
Kristen,
I have a
how
question.
how did this sacrifice affect the rest of your teenage years? Or did you stay in this for the rest of your teenage years?
So I never went back to figure skating until actually recently. So I gave it up completely. It went from 100 to 0, literally in that night. And that's why my coach just was floored. I want to kind of reach out to him now because I haven't. I didn't speak to him after all of this. I
Oh, you should.
stopped and I left, and I should. I really do
You
because I think
should. I think
he
he'd be
deserves it.
so happy that you're back to skating.
I
Wow.
think so too.
And quickly, and because you said, I think you said your father encouraged the skating back before you went to the camp. So, what was his reaction when you came back from the camp and said, "I'm no longer skating because I gave it up for God because that's what they told me to do"?
So I think my parents, one, they were confused too, to be honest with you. Even though we had gone to all of these churches, you have to remember that we were fairly new to the fundamentalist Baptist world. So for them, they had invested all this time and this money. So my dad was more like, "We spent all this money on you." He was more upset about that. My
Right.
mom was more like, "I don't understand," but she was more religious than he was. He wanted the control, she wanted the religion. So for her, she now has a daughter that's being glorified in the church. So honestly, she enjoyed that part of it because now our family is elevated. I
You were a
elevated
star.
our family. Yes.
And
Yes.
you were a religious star, not just yeah. And well, and a
Yes.
skating star, but that wasn't okay. Wow.
Yes. Yes. So now our story gets to almost to the year 2000, and my dad was this huge conspiracy theorist. His thought process about the government was that the government was out to get us as Christians, and as children, we were told that come the year 2000 or Y2K, that we could potentially be rounded up by the government by gunpoint and taken to concentration camps. That's literally what he would tell us. So I would actually have nightmares as a child that were so realistic that it felt like I was shot. So I would wake up in pain because I had all of these images in my head. So now I've given up skating. We're in this fundamentalist Baptist world. Now my dad is saying Y2K, the world is going to shut down. We need to prepare. So at this point, this church is just outside of Chicago, like the suburbs of Chicago. That's where I grew up. I have all of my relatives there. So my grandparents were there, my aunt, uncle, and they're totally outside of the religious world. They were never in it. They always disliked my father because they knew how he was. So he never really liked them. So while we had relationships with them, it was very distant because of that. But I still had that connection. I still had connection to outside people when we lived there. Because of his fear and because of the way he believed, he sold our home there and we moved to what I like to refer to as the middle of nowhere. It wasn't, it was just East Tennessee, but it was at the end of a gravel dirt road. We bought like 30 acres of property where we lived off grid. We canned food. We set up this whole storage unit. We had a generator. We had chickens. So I go from the suburbs of Chicago. I was a mall girl, so I loved the mall. Go from that to having grandparents, to having cousins, having an aunt and uncle, to isolation, complete and utter isolation. And now, mind you, again, 12, 13 years old. So I'm in the middle of puberty. I'm angry. My parents move me to the middle of nowhere. I'm just mad. Like, I don't understand. And I'm terrified because I don't know what's coming. I have no outlet. This is before, obviously, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was 18 because of rules, but I had no way to access anybody outside of this world now. So now it's just my family. We think this is coming. Now cue the really hardcore cult fundamentalist Baptist church. We meet them when we were out and about at one of the stores. It actually was an hour and a half away from where we live. So we traveled an hour and a half every Wednesday and Sunday, each way, people, to attend this church. And this particular church, this is the one where when you look at Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, the really big things to look at are it is independent of any church body. So it's not affiliated with any church. The pastor is the end all be all to whatever goes on within the church. That's where your cult perspective comes from. He decides what he hears from God because ultimately he's God's voice in the church. We don't have a way to cross reference what he's saying. We just are told, I'm being told by God, this is how I'm interpreting the Bible. This is what you're going to do. So he was in control of everything. And then I also like to point out the fundamentalist part. That's always the most extreme version of a religion. So they took everything to the extreme. So this entire church was homeschooled. They did not allow any outside entities to school any of the children. They had a homeschool like umbrella in the church, meaning the state required testing. So the church ran the testing as well. They kept everything completely within this bubble. You didn't associate with people outside of this church. Everything was about the church. So you were there at least twice a week, if not more. Everything became about that. So now you have this hardcore cult that isolates you even further. I'm in a position living on property where I'm isolated. So this is kind of what I like to refer to as my little bit of a rebellious phase. This was back in the day where chat rooms were a thing. So my family had a computer and technically it was in the family room, but I would sneak and like get onto these things because I was angry. I was so mad that I didn't have anybody. I was terrified. So I was looking for connection, right? My family found out. Thankfully, they weren't able to, like, go into these things, but they had someone from the church actually do a deep dive on our computer to figure out what I was doing. I get caught, right? They were only able to see, like, usernames and those kinds of things, but I was punished both physically and having my door taken off, so I no longer had privacy because I could no longer be trusted, and the punishments were so extreme that I decided in myself that that was the point where I'm like, I don't want this to happen to me anymore. I'm 13 years old. So this kind of becomes the point where I really stop balking the system and I become that like perfect church girl. And if you asked anybody in that church, I was known as the one who smiled all the time, the one who obeyed all the rules, because my dad was very extreme and I didn't want those punishments. So I decided that I'm just going to toe the line. I'm going to really dig in. And so I really, after this point, after 13, use this religion as if it was my breath, everything about me. So I believed everything. I believed everything I was being taught because of my father being as abusive as he was. The pastor kind of became almost a father, right? God almost became a father. So I really delved into this religion as if everything was my breath of life because I didn't have anything else at that point. And what's really hard about that looking back is because it became so much a part of my identity when I left, it took me so long to figure out what was me and what was this religion because it was really a part of who I was because everything was so tumultuous. I was looking for anything that seemed like an anchor, anything that gave me any consistency because I just didn't experience that in my home. So I'm in this church as a teenager. Initially, when I went to this church, the girls weren't allowed to go to college, but that changed as I got a little bit older. The pastor's daughter, she had wanted to go, and so they found two independent fundamentalist Baptist colleges that were approved. That they said, okay, you can go to either one of these two colleges, and I was like, yay! I get to do anything outside of this, right? Because at this point, I've just been isolated this entire time. So my brother attends the Crown College, and that is in Powell, Tennessee. So again, East Tennessee. We're more West Tennessee, where this church ended up being more like the Knoxville area. So when I was 18, so fun fact that I was a graduating class of three. It was my best friend and then also the pastor's son, and those are the only people. And another fun fact, so we'll delve into excommunication because this actually plays a role before I get excommunicated. So, as you know, my dad is this huge conspiracy theorist. These churches, so there are a variety of different fundamentalist Baptists, and the one that I went to, they were very big on just staying in their bubble. You stay in this bubble, they stay in this bubble. They were not big on getting into politics. I mean, they preached about how horrible the world is, right? But it was more like we need to isolate ourselves away from the world, not become part of it. So, my dad, being how he was about the government, he was very loud, and the pastor didn't agree with some of the things he said. And remember what I talked about with the pastor being the ultimate authority? He didn't approve. And because my dad wouldn't stop talking, my father, while I attended, was excommunicated from the church while he was in our home. Yes. So this was during the time that I was graduating high school. So excommunication means you can't come to church. You can't come to church functions. The graduation was a church function. So he was not allowed to attend unless he came to apologize at the church, which he didn't. Now, I will tell you that during this time, it was kind of a catch 22 for me. I my father was horrifically abusive, and I tried to avoid him at all costs, to be honest with you, but I was also a child, and I tried really hard to get him to love me, and so part of me was sad because I'm like, I see all these other girls with this relationship with their father, I don't have that, so now I'm also void of that at my high school graduation. But then at the same time, because of how tumultuous he was, it was like I didn't want him, but I did. So it was this really weird situation. So my father was not at my high school graduation because he was, in fact, excommunicated. And during the time that I was at the church, there were families that were excommunicated, and some of my best friends were. And I was not allowed to talk to them because once you're excommunicated, you're not supposed to have anything to do with them, or you could be excommunicated as well. So I graduate with a class of total of 3, and I head off to Crown College where my older brother attended as well, and you think, "Great, she's getting out, she's able to experience things." People, hard no. This college was even more strict than what my own growing up experience was. So again, we talk about levels. This was just a very different level. Purity culture is obviously a big thing, and I think most people are aware of what purity culture is, and you can imagine within this world, it's heightened. So at this college, that's their goal, is they need to keep these girls pure, and the thought process is we have boys and girls mixing, so we need to make sure that we have these extreme rules on the girls, not the boys, to keep them pure. So, one, as a student, as a female student, you are required to live on campus. There were these houses that literally were adjacent to the church, so you could see them. If you wanted to leave to go to the store, let's say, you couldn't go as a female unless you had 5 girls that went with you. You had to check in and check out. So you were to tell them where you were going, how long you were going to be gone for, and when you were back. So you need to make sure at all times that they knew where you were going. And I'm telling you, I swear that they had spies at these places because they would know things. Like my friends would come back and they would get in trouble for things. Like I don't know how they
They
knew.
followed you.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. They followed
Yes.
you. Yeah. They had to have.
100%. Yes, because they would get in trouble for things that they wouldn't know. So not only that, but then there were approved places that the girls could work. And they would actually, the college would speak to these employers to tell them that we were students, to tell them what we were required to wear, when we couldn't work. So we were not allowed to miss like Wednesday night service or Sundays. We weren't allowed to work on those days. And I always thought to myself, what are they telling these employers? Because how is this even possible with HR and rules and everything else? But they did. And that's why they approved of these places because they had communication with them. So you have all of these rules. Obviously, there's a lot of dress code rules too. But the really interesting part about this, and this was what I found really funny, it's almost like Stepford wives there. All these girls, because the whole goal at these churches, your goal as a woman is to be a wife. There's no other goal. You are to be a wife and you're to be a mother. So in the mornings, you would see these girls with, and I know curling irons and everything are normal, but this was too like, you would have some people like that, right? You'd have a diversity of other people maybe not doing that. No, everybody's lined up. Everybody's going to like the 10th degree of getting themselves made up and making themselves look beautiful, obviously within their standards. But it was really interesting looking back to think we were all the same way. We all were doing the same thing. So it was kind of Stepford wife ish. So the boys were allowed to live off campus. They had no rules about where they could go. They didn't have to check in and check out. They could work wherever they wanted besides the fact of not working Wednesday nights and Sundays, obviously. So at this college on day 3, they had an outing to the Ripley's Aquarium in Knoxville. Now, mind you, this is the first time I'm away from home. I'm not really thinking about boys too much because I'm just excited to be doing anything that's different than what I've always done. And during this outing, obviously a lot of people came up to me and I was like, "Oh, whatever." So this is where I meet my husband that we've been married now. It'll be 21 years in May. So I was reading something in the aquarium and I look up and I look over at him and he sees me and I give him this big smile and he'll tell you, he's like, "I would have never come up to you had you not smiled because I was so intimidated by you." He's like, "I just wouldn't have done it." But he did. We talked the rest of the time. We became like known as the it couple on campus. Everybody knew who we were. Everybody knew we were in love. He
I
became, and as she's, yes.
I gotta ask, because you started this college trip journey story with the fact that they wanted to keep you separate from the boys and that they wanted to make you pure. Obviously, that meant no boys, no sex, no kissing, and the boys lived off campus, you lived on campus. This outing to this aquarium, was that done on purpose? So, because then you said they want to get married. So, this trip to the aquarium, you met your husband. Was this arranged by the church for that purpose? So the guys and the girls get to meet each other?
It is, and it's all chaperoned. So that's the key
Ah,
thing for all of these things. So dating is not allowed in this world, it's courting. And the biggest difference is dating, you're kind of just testing the waters, but you have no idea if you're going to last more than one date with someone. Courting is with the intention of marriage. You are entering into a relationship saying, I intend to marry you at the end of this. So, and it is also chaperone. So, you're never allowed to be alone with anybody of the opposite sex. So, you couldn't even at this college shake hands with the opposite sex, let alone anything else. So, they always have people all over the place watching what you're doing. And believe me, if you do anything, they see it and you will be told. So everything is very much contained within that. So I met him, and I think a lot of that, because the ultimate goal for all of this, when you think of college, okay, and I think this is important for people to know, this college was not accredited. If I had stayed and I had gotten a degree, or let's say I left and I wanted to go somewhere else, none of this would transfer because it's not an accredited school. So not only is it not accredited, so it would be worthless anywhere, it also, you couldn't get any funding from the government, so you had to pay for it by yourself, and it was insanely expensive, so people really struggled to pay for it.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up.
So all of those things matter in the sense that you can't really do anything with what you're doing from here. And the importance is it's not for the education. The whole goal is to create people who are missionaries, who are pastors, who are youth pastors. The goal is to stay within the cult. It's not to leave and to get a career. It's to stay in ministry and serve because they want to use you and your abilities, and so they wanna keep you within that bubble. So, really, it's just to meet people so you can pair off, right? But pair off
Right.
in a way that you're staying pure until marriage. You're able to find someone that is of that same sect, so you know that you're aligned with your values. So, really the goal of these places is to get you ready for ministry and to marry you off. That's the goal.
So he smiled at you, or you smiled at him?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
what so do you exchange number? I mean, how did walk us through that, because if the courtship so that began the courtship between your husband and you, but when's the next time do you get to see him?
So all of us attend classes together, so that part is all together. So it's not
Oh,
like
okay.
girls separate classes and boys unless they had a specific like etiquette class or something that was just for the women.
Okay.
The classes were together. So I would see him on campus. At this point, we did have phones, and those, because they were individual, you are able to do that. So I guess in that respect, I did have a little bit of freedom because we did have phones. And it wasn't something they could ask for your phone, but it wasn't something that was super heavily monitored. So I guess that is a little bit of a loophole now that I'm
So
thinking about it.
wait a second. So you were allowed electronic devices because at this point, we did have cell phones back. I'm guessing
Yes.
this is around 2005, I wanna say?
Yes, yes,
The flip phones were out then.
yes.
But you said you also had a computer back at the house where you were on AOL chat rooms or something like that, and I found I wanted to ask you then that would how was that allowed? Because today I know that
Well, it wasn't. Remember, she got in trouble.
Yeah.
no, but they had a computer in the house. So you didn't bring the
Oh,
computer
yes.
in.
Yes, that's true. Yes,
She
you're
was
Yes.
allowed to
chatting
have a
she was
computer, you're right.
chatting with somebody on but how did you get the computer in the house? Because I'm just thinking, wouldn't they want or back then, they didn't know how bad the computers world because the internet wasn't born really yet then.
It
I mean,
was
it
in
was
the very early
very
stages.
early stages.
Yes, and remember we did our schooling, so that's how we did our schooling curriculum was loosely on the computer, and you are
Okay.
completely correct that my parents knew nothing, and as a teenager, again, spunky, remember I might not have a lot of formal education, but I'm very smart. So I figured it out myself, and they knew it. So the way the computer was, it was in the family room, so it was with everybody there. So I had to be devious, for lack of a better term, to be able to figure out when were the times that I could sneak on there and do these things, but clearly I wasn't doing it good
Okay.
enough because then they got someone from the church who knew about computers who
Some
did a deep
early
dive.
IT guy to come in and check
Yes,
it out
yes,
too.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, and at college, it wasn't any different. A lot of people had laptops, they had a computer room, people had cell phones, so there was technology. So in that respect, they couldn't really do very much, but they kept control as far as where you were living, when you were in class, and that type
Were
of
did
thing.
you figure out that you could text your boyfriend your I don't even know what to call him. Was he I guess he was your boyfriend?
Yes, at the time, yeah.
The husband that courting you, I guess, is
Her
a boyfriend?
betrothed.
To
Yes.
be right. Were you guys texting? Were you on AOL? Because AOL had instant messenger back then, and although it
Yes.
wasn't on your phone, I think it was on like you said you had a laptop. So were you guys
Yes.
communicating that way?
We
You
were, and it's kind of funny too looking back because we would call each other, like, before bed, and we'd end up both falling asleep because we'd stay on the phone so long with each
We
other.
all did that. Young love
Yes.
does that. Yeah, you stay up talking all night to the who's gonna fall asleep first. Yeah. Okay. That's cute.
Exactly. So it is really funny when we first started, seeing each other or courting because it really wasn't official at first, right? We were just getting to know each other. We were just talking. Again, I was so into this way of thinking that I made sure that we had Bibles in between us, that we had a chair in between us. I was very like Nick will tell you now, he's like, "You made me work so hard for you." And so now he's a pastor's kid. He grew up in this world, but like his story is even crazier because pastor kids are a different level. But he always balked the system. So he didn't really buy into all of this himself, but he toed the line. So he laughs now because he's like, he didn't really agree with any of these rules. But here he meets somebody who like believes everything is super Christian, so he laughs about it now and says, "It's a good thing I loved you, otherwise I probably wouldn't have
Would have
gone by
bailed
all
on
of
you.
that."
Yeah.
But it's funny. So, a funny story, this was in chapel, and we were sitting next to each other, Nick and I, and we had Bibles in between us. But one of the pastors actually came up to me afterwards and said we were sitting too close and that I had such a great testimony that I needed to be aware of that because people are going to look to me to see how they should act. So,
Mm,
could be the most minor thing, and you're being called out for something like that. So that's just the way it was. They really and truly watched
they
everything that
seem
you
yeah.
were doing. Yes.
Did this somehow lead to your excommunication?
Yeah, let's
I'm
get to
going to
that because
make an assumption.
Yes, it did. So fast
Okay.
forward. Nick ends up leaving the school because he can't afford it. So before even the first year ended, he went back up to Michigan. This school is in Tennessee. I finished my first year, but I ended up getting pneumonia at school. One, the food was horrible. I think just the environment was just not good. So I got really sick and I ended up in the hospital with all of these things. So I go home after the first year. So I'm in Tennessee. He's in Michigan. We want to be together. He wants to court me. And if you backtrack a little bit, during this time, this was when I turned 19, I actually visited his family in Michigan because he had a cousin that passed away. And so I requested permission to go up there. I stayed with his family. Now, remember when I told you about levels of fundamentalism? I was deep, but I was the kind where you could wear a skirt that was just below your knee. It didn't have to be to the floor. I wore a little bit of makeup. His family was skirts to the floor, no makeup, like
Oh my
just a
God.
different extreme. So here I come.
Mm.
His
Oh,
family
no.
detest me. Like I had never been hated in my life. And all of a sudden I go to his family and they just hate me.
But
And
do
so
they understand that you're a different sect of the IFB, or they
I
don't
was too
care?
worldly. I was too worldly.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, honestly, I feel like they probably saw some of my spunk before I even knew I had spunk, and they didn't like that either. But anyway, so
You were
his family wouldn't let.
dangerous.
Yes, yes. Oh, you'll find I really was too. So they decide that he's not allowed to. So I'm at the point now, I've experienced love, I've experienced safety with him that I haven't before. So I start questioning, I start really looking inside myself and saying, what am I doing? I've kind of experienced a little bit of that freedom, right? Because with him and those conversations with him, because remember, he balked the system. So I'm starting to really question everything. And now I'm being told that the one person that I feel this with, I can't be with. So I made a decision that I was going to leave. And at 19 years old, I didn't have a car because I was a girl. So I had to, what I did is I left really early one morning. It was like in the wee hours of the night. So about like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I took my family's car and left a note and went to the airport with it and told them where it was going to be. I couldn't afford a plane ticket. I bought a Greyhound bus ticket. And I left the car there, got on a bus. I had distant relatives that lived in southern Michigan, so close to where Nick lived in Michigan, but not super close, but around the area. And these distant relatives were not in the cult or in religion. They were distant relatives of my mom. So I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. Is there any way that I could stay with you for a bit?" Thankfully, they said yes. So I'm on a Greyhound bus at the age of 19, have never left home. I'm terrified. My family has discovered that I've left, and all of a sudden my phone just starts blowing up. I'm 19, so the police can't do anything, but they have the police calling me. His family start calling me and saying that even though it wasn't true, because they want to find out where I am. They need to know where I am. So they're going to do whatever they have to do that. So they lie and say that Nick has been arrested and that unless I tell them that something's going to happen to him. And again, I don't know anything. So I'm freaking out. Everybody's calling me. I get to Michigan. My aunt and uncle pick me up. My phone's still blowing up. There's all these threatening messages from his father, from his mother, from my parents. So finally, I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you where I am. Cue the next day, my dad and my brother show up at my aunt and uncle's house to get me. And if you've learned anything from this religion so far, a lot of it is guilt. And because I believed all of it and I didn't want to create problems for my aunt and uncle, I let them take me back home. So I took a car ride back to Tennessee and back home. And I actually journaled through all of this process. And during this time, I put in there that the pastor talked to me and said, if you go with Nick or if you're with Nick, you're with the devil, that this is against God, that I'm not allowing you to do this. You need to repent. And I did. I repented and I got right with God. And again, I'm journaling this and I put in there that I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to get right with God. I want to do this the right way. And looking back at it, it's really crazy to see that fight, that me coming out and saying I'm doing this and then being pulled back into it because the fear is so real that it weighs you down to the point where you don't even know what is up and what's down. You just have no idea. Now, the next part, I really don't know where this came from. Clearly, I had a lot more in me that I knew even at the time. But as I'm journaling and as I'm fighting all of this and I've repented, I have this moment of clarity where I'm like, I sit back and I literally journal. If I don't get out now, I'm never going to leave. And it's within that moment, I literally make a decision. I don't care anymore. I'm done. I'm doing this. I'm leaving. So I go to my mom and I'm like, look, I want to be with Nick, but I don't have any money. Can I stay here while I earn some money so I'm not just going out onto the street? So she's like, you have to meet with the pastor. She wouldn't even have a conversation with me. So we go to the pastor. We're at like a Panera Bread at a table. I tell him the same thing. I'm like, I really want to be with Nick. I love him. This is what I want to do with my life. We want to be married, whatever. He lets me finish. He turns away from me, won't look at me after that point, looks at my mother and says, she is a poison to your family. She has to leave. So I was kicked
But
out.
okay, back up just a sec. When did Nick become the devil? He's in a more strict sect. I don't understand. Why is he the evil one? How did that happen?
Yeah, they don't want you. His parents didn't want you, and then your people didn't want him. What's going on here?
Yep. And I think what it comes down to when I look at it now, it comes down to it's because it's what we wanted,
Control.
not what
Control.
they wanted
Yep.
for us. So we wanted it. So therefore, it's wrong. So to
Mhm.
both of them, it's like you are doing what's selfish, which can't be of God. Hence, it's for the devil.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm told I have to leave. My aunt buys me a second Greyhound bus ticket to go back up to Michigan. And the night before I leave, I'm in bed in my pajamas, and they start bringing a string of people to pray over me
Ugh,
to try to change my mind and what I'm
like
doing.
you're possessed. So it was almost like an exorcism. I can
Yes,
imagine. Yeah.
and I think about it now, and I think about you take a girl who grew up this way, who had no voice, who had no autonomy, yet I somehow, through all of this, continued to do what I was going to do.
Persevered.
Yes, and honestly, I blow my mind now because I didn't even realize how big it was until now, and I'm looking back at it and I'm like, that was really gutsy. I really don't know how I did that. So I packed up a bag. I left at like again 4 o'clock in the morning. My parents dropped me off at the bus station, took that bus back up to Michigan. I'm living with my aunt. Cue the excommunication. So it was one of those things where it didn't happen initially, the excommunication. My parents were still like trying to call me and convince me. But then I had my best friend call me. And she was like, "What's going on? I don't understand what's happening." So I told her, I said, "Look, I don't want to create problems for you. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing, and I'm safe." Because of that conversation, it was then took as I'm trying to get her out of the church. So now I'm evil. So now I'm doing something wrong. So then the pastor excommunicates me. So once that excommunication hits, my parents drop off. I can't talk to my brothers. No one from the church is contacting me. I'm now a lost cause. They have now dropped me. So we're not going to have anything to do with you anymore. So I'm 19 living with my aunt. Nick has still not gotten out, mind you. He's still living at home. So this is cue my mouth and my spunkiness that ends up getting him out. So again, pastor's kid, really extreme. He tried to leave at one point, but his dad actually blocked him in the driveway and would not let him leave, like physically. So his dad calls me, and I don't even remember all of the context of why he called me or even all of the details. When you have a lot of trauma, sometimes your brain will disconnect from different things. So I struggle sometimes with memory. This is no exception. But he calls me, has this conversation, and I just remember that I defended myself with Bible verses, which again was very spunky given how I grew up and men are in charge, right? But I was like, no, I'm defending myself. He was so mad that he gets off the phone and he calls Nick and he goes, "Your blonde bombshell just had a conversation with me. You two are made for each other." And I'll get into why he said that. So he's like, "You can leave." So he let him leave. So he was at work. Nick had a normal
Wow.
job. He went home, packed up all of his stuff, and came to my aunt's house. So that's how both of us, and he got excommunicated right away. His didn't take any time. His dad was like, "Nope, you're done." He excommunicated him.
So you
Uh,
guys then weren't married inside the religion or the church at all, but you're still together.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. You helped
It's
each other get out of the cult.
Yes. Well, I like to say that I pulled him out because he was having such a hard time because, again, being a pastor's kid is just a different level. It really
Of
is.
course, yeah.
Right.
And so
But
even
you
though
said
he
he
bu
wasn't fully in.
Yeah, so he
Like he
balked the system,
right.
but it was his dad is a very threatening person, physically and emotionally abusive to him his whole life, so there was another level with that where he blocked him. He's just a very scary individual, so I can understand why he just was terrified to leave because again, he grew up in this world too, and even though he balked it, anything outside of that is just terrifying because this is how you grew up and this is what you know. So
Do
we're
either of you have relationships with your parents or in-laws or your siblings now?
we kinda excommunicated them eventually,
Yeah.
actually, we had to. So his family, unfortunately, is still really heavy in that, and it just got to a point where
Mm.
we couldn't heal while also having them in our lives. One, because of my mouth continuously throughout the years.
Mm.
I am very much a believer in humans and our right to be able to live how we choose, and they knew that, and I'm very outspoken about it, and they were like it just created so much contention and there were things that, when you come out of these worlds, it's interesting. A lot of survivors will say this your parents deny everything. We never abused you. We never hurt
Of
you. We didn't do
course.
any of these things. So you couple denial, which is awful in of itself. But then they were vindictive. And they actually, when we left, they didn't just excommunicate us, his family. His parents decided that they were going to write a book, like I like to refer to it as, and they got with my family, and anything that they deemed as bad that we did growing up, they put it in this book.
They
And they mailed it to not only the people in the church, but to all of our family. So, aunt, uncle,
Just
grandparents, the
like a
people.
log of your sins.
Mhm. And
Wow.
remember, we're fearful anyway, right? So now we're already fearful of, the world and everything else, but now we don't know everything that they've told everybody. So you just have all of this fear. So what we end up doing is we just isolate ourselves, including from the family that helped us because we were terrified. We didn't know what people thought of us. We didn't know what was going to happen. I can't even describe to you the level of fear I lived within those first couple of years because I still believed it. So anything bad that happened, I thought God was punishing us. I genuinely believed that even though I did the right thing, I still ultimately did the wrong thing to God, and God didn't approve of me. So anything that was happening that was bad, I genuinely believed we were being punished.
So that would take us we gotta look at the clock. We got a few minutes, and we haven't even gotten to your deconstruction. So you just said that you felt that you disobeyed God, right? Was this, like, right after? And your deconstruction, so how long have you been out? When did this all happen?
So we've been married 21 years. So that's how long, or almost 21 years. That's how long it's been now, right? So those first couple of years, I just spent in a lot of fear and terror of God. And I think it was just a slowly I ended up falling into the hospitality industry. I started at a front desk and I actually moved up to a catering sales manager within the first year. Again, spunky,
Oh,
remember?
good for you, yeah.
So I moved up really quickly and then I moved up to a director's position within like the first 3 years. So I began to have a career. I was successful. I was getting to know people. I was beginning to have confidence in myself. And so the more I did that, the more I was able to separate what the church taught me based on what I'm feeling. And I kind of go through a process of not believing anything at all. I will never say that I was really never atheist because I've always been more spiritual. I believe that everything is just so much bigger that I just don't really know what it is. So at this point, I'm more agnostic. I feel like there's something more, but I don't know. Right.
You answered my first question. So,
Yeah, so I,
okay.
I like to say that I'm agnostic, but I'm also a humanist in the sense that I am such a big believer in the collective as humans, that we're all connected, that at the end of the day, there are way more good people than bad, that I genuinely believe in people. As cheesy as it sounds, I truly believe in love. I grew up not in a home with love. And so one of my main goals in life is to spread as much of that as I can. So now I work for a nonprofit But so that's kind of how I deconstructed. I had an amazing career, really began to build myself. But I'll be honest with you, it really was only within these last year and a half or 2 years because I fell into being a wife, right? I grew up really quickly. I then had my son 4 years
I
in.
was
So I'm
just
now
going
a
to ask you
mother.
about children. Yep.
Yes, and then I had my daughter 9 years later, but not that these roles were bad, but the way I grew up, that's your identity. So I kind of fell into these things, right? And I had my career, but besides that, these were my roles, and I really never took the time to figure out what does Kristen actually like. So at this point, I'm almost turning 40, and I kind of hit a point. I was 39, and I'm like, who am I? What do I actually like? And so I start doing this. Skating comes into play. I had been really scared to go back for a variety of reasons, but before my 40th birthday, I was like, "Okay, I think I'm ready." So I go and buy skates because I can't use rental skates, right? Like, I was a figure skater. Go and buy skates, and I think it was a month before my 40th birthday, I do my first time on the ice, and I can't even begin to describe to you the feeling of being back on the ice. Again, it was like coming t like, I was going back home again, and I'm already spinning, and I'm already doing my first jumps within the first couple of months now, so that's very exciting.
Wow. Good for you.
Yes, but for the first time, I started writing my book or my biography within this last year and a half. And I've really just taken the time to, like you were saying at the beginning, reclaiming things. I love Christmas music and I'm a singer. And a lot of the times when I was, getting out of it, I was like, well, I can't listen to this because it's Christian or it has a Christian connotation. But I'm like, but why can't I? Why can't I love something even if it's connected to something that maybe I don't believe in? So what I've decided to do is take each thing, see what I think about it, separate how I was taught. How does it feel for me? Do I like it? And if I do, I'm reclaiming that for me. And femininity was probably one of the biggest. When I first started in my career, I didn't wear dresses. I wore pants because I'm like, I'm balking the system. I can't do this. But the more I got in my career and the more I became more sure of myself and that confidence, I put on a dress with a blazer because I was a director at the time and I was young. So I'm like, I got to be confident and powerful. I put this on with a pair of heels and I'm like, this is amazing. I actually really like wearing this. So I've done it the way I want to do it. And the femininity piece is, you're right. The femininity within that cult was I'm subservient to a man. I'm less than a man. I don't have a voice. But truly, what being feminine is being powerful and having a voice and being able to step into that feminine power. So, the big word for me is just reclaiming these things that were either taken or I was brainwashed into believing I had to give up, and I'm reclaiming them for me one piece at a time.
Kristen, we got to wrap it up. And before we do, and it's just amazing. It's just another story that you just, right, Melody? Just you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
expect. And, but Melody has so my question I usually answer is, where are you with your faith today? So you did answer that. Melody would like to ask you her question.
My question is, Kristen, if there's possibly a young lady listening who might be might be attending an IFB college right now, and she's listening and she's starting to have doubts, what would be your words of advice to her or somebody in a similar situation?
Try to listen to your voice, which can be really hard because there's a lot of noise, but quiet that noise if you can and listen to yourself and tune into what your voice is telling you and trust that. Trust your heart, which is what they tell you not to do. Trust your gut and go with that because you can't go wrong when you do that. It's not wrong. That is the exact thing that you should do.
I love that. And that's what you did. You went back to the skating, which is where your heart apparently was for a really long time. And I'm so glad to hear that you found that love for that again. That's awesome.
Yes, it's probably my biggest achievement to date, and I'm obsessed. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite thing to do.
Kristen, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for, and if you do write, you're writing a book, correct?
I am. That is correct.
So when you finish, when the book's published, would you come back and talk about it?
Absolutely,
We'll
100%.
we'll promote it for you.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Yes.
Once again,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
What an
Thank
amazing
you.
woman you are. You're great. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
And once again, we want to thank Kristin so much for coming on the show and sharing her amazing story with us. What an articulate young lady. And she is just so good at telling her story and just
Yeah.
very, very interesting. Lots of details. Like I was saying after we kind of went off air, too, about how you put the word Baptist in there and people might think, oh, that's mainstream religion. But when you
No.
add the fundamentalist
Uh-uh.
Baptist, we're talking a lot of culty things here, a lot of
Culty. Yep.
isolation, abuse, a lot of things in there that really put it into that cult category, right?
And the whole male is the
Oh,
dominant
yes.
figure. Once again, and we talked about this, it's the taking from the cult manual. It's,
Yes.
the leaders, and in this particular one, she said that the pastors were the ones that ran each individual sect, right?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
so he could just reach into the cult manual and go, "I wanna pick from column A, column
Yes.
B,"
And
and
that's why the different sects had different rules,
that's
right?
why her husband's sect was so much different, that they had to
Yes.
wear longer dresses and
Yes. And
whatever
no
else they had.
makeup. And
No
yeah.
makeup, and it
But
just boggles my mind. But what's interesting I liked about Kristen was at what was it, 19? She just said, "Enough."
yeah, at
She
19.
just said, "Enough of this," and
Yep.
she found a man that she wanted to marry, or he wanted to marry her, and they
Yeah.
wanted to be together. This is almost a, I wouldn't say Romeo and Juliet, but it's a
A
love
little bit.
story. Yeah, it's a love story
Yeah.
that these 2 were not gonna be able to be together if they stayed in this cult,
Which is
and
ironic because they were both in the same cult,
yeah,
right? I mean, the
they had to
you're
get out of the cult to get married, which is
yeah,
just stupid.
exactly. They had to leave to stay together because they
But
wanted to be together, that they
yep.
didn't want them to be together. "Oh, no, do you guys think this is a good idea? Then we can't think it's a good idea, so we don't want you to
But
be
they're the
together."
ones that allowed them to
Yeah,
introduce each other, and
exactly.
it's just so back ass. And I said it
Oh,
was
exactly.
stupid, but it was stupid, meaning it was stupid for them because they
Yes.
left the cult. Not stupid for the cult, not for
Yes,
Kristen.
exactly, because there was no reason they couldn't have had
It's silly.
basically had them get married and stay be, good cult members.
Yeah.
He could have been a pastor and she could have been a pastor's wife, and
Yeah.
they could have started their own little
Oh,
sect or
I,
something.
I'm,
I'm
I'm
glad they didn't, mind you,
no.
but
Yeah.
I'm
And
saying that could have been the way it worked out had the cult not been so pushed so hard
yep.
against it.
And I'm glad she came back to figure skating because not that I'm
Oh,
a
absolutely.
a fan, but when I see figure skating on TV, I
It's
watch it
beautiful.
because
Yeah.
it is something very, you don't see it often, and I know it's in the Olympics and stuff, but that's every couple of years. Every once in a while, you walk wherever you might be, you'll see something like that, and it's just so graceful to watch.
It
So
is. It
I
is.
would
It's
I would love to
beautiful.
see some videos of her doing that if she ever
Oh, she
does.
does. There's she has some of it on her TikTok.
Oh, she does. Okay, I'll go take a
Yes,
look.
yes,
So
so you can go I can send you a link to her TikTok so you can go
excellent.
see it, but and Kristen, once again, and we will have her links in the show notes as well, but Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah,
show. We
thank
do
you.
appreciate it. As always, thank you for listening to Cultimatum. We truly appreciate your support as we work to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. It helps more people discover the podcast, creating a greater awareness. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep tuning in to our latest episodes.
You can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for extra content and updates.
And be sure to join our Facebook community, Cultimatum Podcast, where we continue the conversations and keep you posted when new episodes drop.
And if you're a cult survivor looking for additional support and connection, we invite you to join the Facebook group Cult Escape and Healing.
You can also find more information about the show, including our full legal disclaimer, on our websites at cultimatumpodcast.com or anonymousandrewpodcaststudios.com.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you'd like to share, you can reach us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to support the show, you can do that by using the link in the show notes called Buy Us a Cup of Coffee. Your support helps cover production costs and allows us to keep bringing these important stories to light.
And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.